It started with the trips. Ethan had been a financial analyst for years, and his job had always been predictable. But about 6 months ago, he began traveling more. First, it was just a weekend here and there, but then it became entire weeks. His excuses were vague: team restructuring, new client territories. And while I didn't love it, I trusted him. Or at least I tried to. We'd been married for 7 years, and Ethan wasn't the type to make waves. He was stable, the calm to my chaos. I was the one who forgot the milk or overbooked our weekends. Ethan remembered every anniversary, knew how I liked my coffee, and always managed to fix whatever minor crisis popped up. But something changed with these trips. He was distracted even when he was home, his phone glued to his hand. He started locking his laptop, which he never used to do. I brushed it off at first, chalking it up to stress, but a nagging feeling crept in. One night, while he was asleep, I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode, his birthday, and told myself I wasn't snooping, just curious. But when I scrolled through his texts and emails, there was nothing. No work updates, no group threads, not even a single message from his boss. His phone was practically empty. I should have confronted him then, but I didn't. I put the phone back and told myself I was overthinking. But the seed of doubt had already been planted, and it grew faster than I could control. A few weeks later, Ethan told me he had another trip, 3 days in Kansas City. I nodded, pretending to accept it, but inside I was unraveling. That night, after he packed his suitcase and fell asleep, I decided I couldn't sit with my suspicions any longer. I followed him. I took a day off work without telling him, booked a flight for the same morning, and rented a car at the airport. It felt crazy, like something out of a bad thriller, but I couldn't stop myself. Ethan didn't go to Kansas City. He drove 3 hours west to an industrial park in the middle of nowhere. I parked far enough away to watch from a distance, my heart pounding as he got out of his car and walked into a nondescript warehouse. He wasn't carrying a laptop or briefcase, just a small black duffel bag. I waited for hours. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. When he finally came out, he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, both tall and broad-shouldered, their faces hard and unreadable. Ethan handed the bag to one of them, and they exchanged a few words. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the tension in their body language was unmistakable. When one of the men glanced in my direction, I ducked, heart racing. That's when I knew this was bigger than I'd imagined. I stayed hidden, barely daring to breathe, until the men got into a black SUV and drove off. Ethan didn't follow them. Instead, he stood there for a moment, staring after the vehicle like he was lost in thought. Then he turned and got back into his car. I debated following him but decided against it. I didn't know who those men were, but I knew enough to realize they weren't the kind of people you crossed. I waited until Ethan had disappeared down the road. Then I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the warehouse. That night, when Ethan came home, he was the same as always, calm, collected, and completely at ease. I watched him like a hawk, searching for any cracks in his facade, but he didn't falter.
Work was fine.
He said over dinner, answering my unspoken question.
The client's happy, but it's always a grind.
I nodded, forcing a smile. Glad to hear it. My mind was racing the entire time. The image of that warehouse, those men, and the duffel bag wouldn't leave me. I needed answers, but I couldn't ask Ethan. Not yet. Instead, I did what any desperate person would do. I Googled. I started with the warehouse address. At first, nothing came up, just a blank spot on the map with no business names or reviews. But after digging deeper, I found a mention of it on an obscure forum. It was listed as a private storage facility, used by various clients for sensitive materials. The vague language set off alarm bells. The next few nights I barely slept. I combed through online records, cross-referenced local business filings, and even searched for any recent police reports in the area. What I found wasn't much, but it was enough to terrify me. The warehouse was linked to a shell corporation that had been investigated for money laundering years ago. The case had been dropped without explanation, but the details were damning. Large cash transfers, offshore accounts, and connections to organized crime. I was in over my head. That weekend, Ethan left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered. I couldn't resist. I opened it, hoping to find anything that would explain what he was involved in. His browser history was empty, And his call log was clean, but his calendar had one entry that caught my eye. Meeting with M. 8 p.m. No location, no other details. Just the letter M. When Ethan came out of the shower, I pretended I hadn't seen anything. But inside my gut was screaming. The next day I made my move. While Ethan was out running errands, I logged into our shared bank account. At first, everything looked normal, our paychecks, our mortgage payments, the usual expenses. But then I noticed a series of withdrawals over the past few months. Thousands of dollars at a time, all taken out in cash. Ethan never mentioned them. By now I knew I couldn't stay quiet. I waited until dinner that night, when the tension between us was almost unbearable. "Ethan," I said, setting down my fork, "can we talk?" He looked up surprised.
Of course. What's on your mind?
"I need to know what's going on with you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The trips, the late nights, the cash withdrawals. What's happening?" His expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker of something in his eyes. Panic, maybe, or guilt.
Work's been stressful, that's all. I didn't want to worry you, so I didn't bring it up.
Stress doesn't explain thousands of dollars in cash, my voice rising. Or why you went to that warehouse instead of Kansas City last week. That got his attention. His fork clattered against the plate as he froze.
You followed me?
His tone sharp. "Yes, I followed you," I shot back. "And I saw you with those men. Ethan, what's going on?" For a moment he didn't answer. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair.
I didn't want you to know, because it's dangerous.
"What do you mean, Ethan?"
The people I'm dealing with, they're not exactly above board. But I didn't have a choice, Amanda. I got caught up in something, and now I can't get out.
I stared at him, my mind racing. Caught up in what? He hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering his voice.
I've been laundering money for them.
The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "For who?" I whispered, barely able to speak.
I don't know their names, they don't tell me much. But they're connected to some powerful people. Dangerous people. And if I don't keep doing what they ask.
He didn't have to finish. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The man I thought I knew, the life we'd built together, it all felt like a lie. "What do we do now?" I asked finally, my voice shaking. Ethan reached across the table, taking my hand.
We get through this, together. I'll figure a way out, but I need you to trust me.
I nodded, but deep down I wasn't sure I could. Days turned into weeks. Ethan seemed more distant, withdrawn. His trips had become more frequent, and the late nights at the office were no longer just excuses, they were real. He wasn't home enough for me to feel like we were a team anymore. But he always reassured me that everything would be fine, that he had everything under control. But I didn't believe him. The more I found out, the more I realized how deep he was in, how far he'd gone to protect me from the truth. He told me about the money laundering, but not the full story. He never mentioned the people who were really pulling the strings, the ones who had their hands in everything from local businesses to politicians. It wasn't just money. It was power. I spent hours on the phone with lawyers trying to figure out what options we had. But they told me the same thing over and over. If Ethan was involved in anything illegal, there was no easy way out. The only solution was for him to walk away, completely disappear, get out of their reach. And he wouldn't do that. One night, I woke up to find Ethan missing from the bed. The house was eerily quiet, and when I checked my phone, I saw a message from him.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to drag you into this. But I have to finish it. It's the only way to keep you safe.
I felt my heart stop in my chest. I tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I had no idea where he had gone, but I knew it was bad. I could feel it in my bones. Hours passed and I paced the house, unable to sit still, unable to breathe. It was like the calm before a storm, and I could see it coming. Only I wasn't sure what form it would take. By the time the sun started to set, I heard a knock on the door. I didn't even hesitate. I opened it, and there was Ethan standing on the doorstep. But he wasn't alone. Two men were standing behind him, both wearing dark suits and looking like they belonged to another world entirely. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice shaking. Ethan stepped forward, holding up a hand.
I didn't want you to be part of this, but I didn't have a choice. They're not going to let me out. They want me to finish what I started.
I felt sick to my stomach. "Who are they, Ethan? What do they want from you?"
They want everything, and they'll do whatever it takes to get it. I can't protect you from them anymore.
One of the men stepped forward, his face expressionless.
We'll be taking him now. He's done what we needed, but his debts are far from over.
I reached for Ethan, desperate. No, please don't do this. But he shook his head, stepping back.
I'm sorry, Amanda. I love you. And I'll always love you. But this is the only way.
And just like that, they were gone. I stood in the doorway for what felt like hours, staring at the empty street. The life I thought I had was slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know if I would ever see Ethan again. The next few days were a blur. I moved around like a ghost, disconnected from everything, from everyone. I tried calling his phone again and again, but it was always dead. And then one morning I got a letter in the mail. It was from Ethan. The handwriting was shaky, almost unreadable.
Amanda, I am sorry. I couldn't protect you. I couldn't protect us. They're going to use me, and I can't stop them. I need you to forget about me. I need you to survive. If you see this, don't look for me. It's over.
The words felt like a death sentence. And that was it. Ethan was gone, swallowed up by the world he'd tried to shield me from. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he's alive or if he's somewhere out there still trying to make things right. But I do know one thing. I'll never be the same. The man I married, the one I loved, isn't the man I thought he was. And I don't know if I'll ever truly understand what happened, or why he couldn't escape. All I can do now is move on, trying to forget the life we had, the dreams we shared, and the broken promises that now haunt me in the silence of every empty room.
If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to click that button. I put a lot of effort into searching through Reddit, so you can enjoy the stories I've found just for you. You already know what to do. See you in the next video.